Great. Morihei Ueshiba.
Morihei Ueshiba.
All right, good. Let's loosen up. Just play with a few variations of this. So first one, just play with bringing the feet together and widening them. So just kind of gradually working a bit further out, a bit further in. You find kind of nice position. Feels okay. You can just kind of steady that position as well. So don't feel you need to kind of constantly adjust with it, but just work within a little bit of a wider stance, a bit narrower stance. Don't go even with the feet. Just a little bit the same, doing it front and back. See, right, left leg forward, lower leg back. Yeah, if you want, just find a position, hang around a little bit, bounce around a little bit. Higher. Key one with this, obviously, as you go into this one, that you might get the tendency for the front knee to start to lock, maybe or the back knee. Just listen to that, and maybe if you feel that, maybe it's just worth just kind of coming up fully straightening, lengthening, and then drop down into it. Obviously, you don't want the one that you're going to kind of collapse into totally. But look for one where the knee just kind of stays free. And obviously, try and get the knees to fall to the toes, spread to the toes. And then just start to combine a little bit, so you can go to the front and back and go a little bit wider. Just let the body drop between the feet, the diagonally across. Back in. Again, just work. You can either work in constantly narrowing, widening, or you could just hang out in one place. Just check in with the shoulders as you're doing it. So you could align the hips and the shoulders totally. Let the shoulders sit onto the hips all the time. That would be a kind of neutral posture. You could just start to go into a little bit of rotation work. I'll let the shoulders start to rotate out. And then just starting to play with, let yourself find the feet a little bit more. So a little bit more contact with the feet. And maybe it's just a kind of heel raise. And do this very lightly. If you do this too hard, you get kind of like a shock through the body, particularly if you're on the top floor. So don't go so far as that, but think about weight just dropping down into it. And mostly just to check on the lower body and the alignments in the lower body. Yeah, just allows it to kind of come different positions. Into different positions. And then look for when you land the weight, just to be kind of the sensation of being even. You might be weighted to one side, but just get the feeling of kind of hitting the middle of the base, between the two. So aim for that as a goal. So if you just basically point a plumb line between the 2 feet at any point, reasonably, generally that's where the spine's going to want to kind of sit in if it's going to be neutral. So and use the hand if you want, kind of use the hands, because the hands are going to also kind of help to drop the body in. You might want to kind of swing in and out of it as well. pulse in and out of it. And if the arms are free, they'll kind of follow that movement anyway. So you might get a kind of natural swing in the body. You might get a raising, lowering of the shoulder. Listen, particularly in this one, listen to the neck and listen to the top of the head. So if I can get the sensation of the bounce of the impulse out the top of the head, that's kind of it's good feedback on the body's kind of free and relaxed. If I'm kind of crunched in the body and got a lot of tension, and you could also play with adding tension, I might just feel that the movement kind of goes to here and doesn't go any further. But if I can kind of loosen out the neck, head, jaw, maybe a little bit. A lot of us carry a lot of tension in the jaw generally. So it's worth sometimes just kind of dropping out the jaw a little bit, and letting the jaw just fully relax down. So it's basically an exercise like giving the body to gravity, basically. So it's just a kind of allowing down. So things tend downwards, obviously, if I let them. So the body would totally collapse if I let it, maybe. But just feel that you're kind of in that standing position, whatever the position is. And just feel you kind of drop into it into the ground. And again, the kind of dual aspect of that would be the more you drop down with it, the more the body's going to kind of also respond back with a kind of feeling up. So something we looked at in the workshop Saturday would be the feeling of heaviness and lightness in the body. So you might start to get a sensation that the lower body's quite heavy, the legs are heavy, and maybe the upper body starts to lighten out a little bit, loosen out a little bit more. Maybe on a good day. On a good day. And then just play the shoulders a little bit. So we just play with a few exercises. One would be like front and back, spreading. And you could keep that bounce going. I would just play with it maybe a little bit. If you think about the movement to spread the arms, think about maybe that's a bit of the raising of the motion. And then the swing down. In the swing down is where the weight of the arm is kind of heaviest in terms of feeling. If I allow it, might feel at that point is where the arm is heaviest, but just feel that motion is just going to assist in dropping, feeling down. And in dropping, feeling down, but also listening to the kind of response back. There's a kind of, if I release to the ground, there's a kind of callback or a feedback up the body. You might feel, maybe. And if you don't feel it, you might be feeling it as tension, or you might be feeling it as a kind of restriction in the body. At the moment, my shoulder really goes down. So that's a kind of also feedback. So I can release the shoulder out a little bit more. Maybe the shoulder allows that movement a little bit easier. Maybe the feedback goes a little bit further through the body. Great. Yeah. And then just want to play with taking it to rotation work. So maybe it's just this kind of exercise. You could also like cast the arms out. But keep that same sensation. So now the movement to raise is going to, or the movement that will be kind of lighter in terms of movement will be somewhere along this line again, like a kind of bird flap up. And then the heavy portion of the movement, where the arms are felt heaviest, will be in the kind of rotation turning. So you just want to use the rotation and just to maybe feel a little bit more weight and allow the rotation to reach to the ground. You could play with this one. Obviously, you could go keep the feeling of hitting the base between the 2 feet in the middle of the base, or you could send it to one leg, one leg more than the other. So that would be then entering into a bit more spiraling positions, and just feel that again the leg's going to receive it. Noticing again the knees, the tendency for the knees to start to lock, particularly anytime I'm going to start to kind of load weight into the leg. You might start to notice two things tend to happen. One is that the knee locks out and then restricts the movement of the hips and the ankles, or the other one is that it twists out of structure, and then again goes to maybe working against the knee joint itself, and then maybe also traveling up into things like the lower back pain problems start to come up, maybe ankles. So just feel that the knees are constantly kind of releasing again to the toes, or spreading to the toes, particularly the leg that's kind of receiving weight in that case. And any kind of twisting in the knee joint will be felt, maybe not only in the knee, but through the rest of the chain of the body. Yeah, nice. Now, an interesting aspect of this, if you think about dividing the body up and down, kind of heavy, light, think about dividing in this movement the body kind of left to right. So you've got like a heavy side of the body. In this case, it will be a little bit more maybe this side of the upper body, and definitely this side, lower body, and the other side of the body. Think about it being a little bit lighter. So you're kind of making a division in terms of feeling. Allow the weight to shift. You could obviously do that back as well. It's a little bit trickier to do that. The natural one to do would be to kind of drop into the front leg when you do it, but you could drop towards the back leg. So a very simple one would be like just to kind of hold position and rock in and out of it. And again, think about heavy and light. A lot of the Chinese texts talk about like emptying and filling. So like emptying one leg, filling the other. So you can think about weight shifts or compression patterns, however you want to think about that as an idea. But it's essentially just dropping weight down, again, releasing through the legs, through the structure of the legs. Great. Very nice. And then maybe start thinking a bit more into a spiral work. So by spiral work, then you're maybe starting to allow the body to tilt out structure in terms of breaking the vertical. So maybe a lot of the spiral work just becomes kind of in this kind of area. Start with a kind of neutral, start with a kind of reasonably low one, and think about the spine still maintaining a kind of sense of length through it. So the tendency then maybe is to go into crouched crunch positions. Not that there's anything wrong with those, and if you take the form of spiral, if you can, it will go into maybe like a kemi work, and then I'm really starting to roll through in without crunching, but there's going to be a natural kind of bowing of the back that we would follow. So in this case, maybe just take it a little bit narrower in terms of movement, or shallower, and just play with the sense of kind of continuous lengthening through the body. You could think now maybe about the sole of the foot and the top of the head, and think about creating that length through the body. And then the hips and the pelvis maybe are going to be acting like a middle weight, and they're going to kind of stretch and bow and do things like that with the rest of the body. So the arms are included in that, obviously, but that main aspect in this, you could look at the posterior chain down the back of the body. Would be one. You could look at the front line of the body. Great. And the one you want to really feel in terms of functional stuff, it would be like the deep core line of the body. So the will be basically attaching things like your psoas, your inner thigh, your diaphragm, your strong neck muscles, lat muscles, anything that's kind of connecting deeply into the core. So then maybe it's starting to take the exercise a little bit further and just feel the point where the core gets really challenged. So that will be like things like spreading out, and then notice how the core kind of goes. So now if the core's not engaging, it's going to kind of split and separate. Nothing necessarily wrong with that, but you might, if I'm looking kind of functional movements and power, things like that, then the body's kind of spread. And that, but weight's one thing, obviously, structure's another. So if I'm looking to kind of be active in the movement, then alignment becomes an issue, and then it's just the point where I'm kind of maybe stretching out the tissues of the body, and then I want to kind of notice whether the core's being engaged with it. Your breathing is going to be a huge part of this, because just how it's kind of connecting into the core apart from anything else. Great. And then you could take that as far as you like. You could also take that really into spiral work, stretching, pulling the tissues apart. So you could think about the hands pulling away or drawing away from each other, creating space, or bowing, however you want to think about that. You could think about the same with the legs. And then obviously, because you've got the legs in the ground, you could also play with maybe taking a leg out of the ground. You could play with very simple ones like picking the leg up and moving it. So just start to explore a little bit. Think again a little bit like functional movements that we do maybe throughout the day, or a little bit challenging movements maybe. Think about really simple ones like stepping over things, pushing things out of the way, opening doors, all these kind of stuff that we do most of the day probably. Good. Yeah, good. Yeah, good. Nice. I guess this one is one we did yesterday, so it's a really nice one. It's just taking a little bit lower and maybe just starting to play with transitioning weight to the hands as well. So useful, obviously, especially if you're going to go into 𝗓𝗡𝗞𝗘𝗠𝗨𝗦𝗨 work, but also just in terms of shoulder mobility and just being able to play with the ground a little bit and play with this kind of feeling. So I'm thinking about taking the body maybe to very challenging positions if I feel comfortable with it, and just feeling what happens to the core, to the breath, the rest of the body. So you can take that to very challenging positions. You could do front and back with that if you wanted to. And it doesn't have to be complicated, it could be very simple. And you could also do that by just predominantly keeping most of the weight in the feet, in the legs, and just kind of brushing the ground. So take it as far as you kind of feel comfortable with. If you start to get feeling like rush of blood to the head or things like that, then you could also do this again with a wall, when we did yesterday. Just as beneficial, so there's no problem with taking it to any kind of contact point. It's just the ground's a really good one because it will just challenge the core a little bit more, maybe in terms of being able to play with weight, and particularly being able to pass weight to the shoulder and to the hands. And it's just a nice one to play with shoulder mobility. And basically, we would call like going from a two-legged animal to a four-legged animal. So you can start to explore some animal movements. Maybe some of the movements we were actually designed to do rather than sitting around all day. But maybe things like crawling around, climbing. And there's a big trend now, obviously, towards animal movements, which is a really great thing. And a kind of mimicry of animals, but also there's just kind of human locomotion movements as well. So we are designed to crawl and move on the ground, so, and climb, obviously. So yeah, good. Oh, camera's gone.
Sorry.
And then just play with taking it maybe more like a kind of brushing form. So what I want to think about now is, again, just use the ground as a little bit of feedback for the hand. Now I want to just play with one hand and just play with maybe sometimes a little bit of contact out of the ground, just as a way to kind of release the shoulder a little bit. So you might start to find like figure of eight patterns going. Think about just the kind of continuous motion. So if the shoulder's released, what I want to play with, the best way to do this would actually be like a weight in the hands. So like a kind of heavy ball, and just allowing the arm to release. And then what I'm going to do is not do anything with the arm, so I'm not going to carry the arm. What I'm going to do is just sway the body. So you can do that in a very basic way, like swaying the upper body. In a more advanced way, maybe it would be like the core of the body is going to kind of create the motion, and the upper body is going to kind of follow. So you can take one hand out of it. And then the aim would be to try and catch your movement and try and continue it. If you start to get getting anything in the lower back going, firing, just bring the body up a little bit deeper. This is the best way to kind of feel the shoulder obviously release. And you just play a little bit, notice whether the hand's being carried through space, and particularly if you've got a heavy object in the hand or you've got a small weight, notice whether the tendency is towards holding it, carrying it, and swinging it. So it's one movement we tend to do a lot because we're generally in a rush lots of time, so we just kind of expend energy just to get the job done kind of thing. But just think in this case about how little effort I need to kind of maintain the grip on the object and just release through the shoulder again. And the aim would be, again, not to do the movement with the shoulder alone, and actually maybe do nothing with the shoulder, just release it, let it traction to the ground with the gravity, and then maybe just play with the rest of the body, being able to send the movement to the shoulder and the shoulder just receiving it. Right. Play a little bit both sides. If you do have any shoulder injury physiotherapy exercises, maybe they give you this kind of circle one to do. Most people do it wrong because they kind of hold the shoulder and then spin the shoulder around and make the shoulder probably worse. And if you can kind of relax the shoulder, get the whole body doing the movement, basically again going to this idea of like ease of movement, make it as easy as I can. But with the aims, kind of again release the shoulder, get the and the one that you're doing that doesn't feel like anything, doesn't feel like effort. That's the one you want to kind of look for in a sense. The one that feels like a lot of effort, again, it's probably just a lot of effort. So that's going to be a little bit easier. And then just play a little bit with the feet, maybe coming up a little bit more, and just play again, going back to basically the first exercise. But think about kind of a continuous motion now, and as much as you can, try and feel that you release the arms. So if you start to lose that feeling, you could go down to this position, and again, just feel that the arms are free. In this position, also you can release the head to really open up the shoulders. The problem then as you come up is obviously again created tension in maybe the front of the body or in the neck, on the jaw, and it's going to kind of lock out the shoulder, and then I lose the mobility, and then I kind of need to carry the arm. So think about the head and shoulders relaxed. Head's just sat on the top of the head, obviously, on top of the shoulders. Head's on the top of the head, that's a new one. Head's on top of the shoulders. So just going back to that little earlier exercise, but again, think about now maybe like a really continuous motion. So catching a motion, following it. And again, just check in with things like now the elbows, whether the elbows are still free, whether the fingers are still free. So you should feel if you're kind of doing this. Well, I think about this is probably maybe you did it when you were a kid, like a bucket full of water, trying to spin it around. And if you do that well, you feel that the whole movement goes right the way through the hand. So it kind of shoots out the hand. So you could actually do this with a weight if you don't feel so much feedback. We do this just with a weight and just try and get the sense again that the movement's going all the way through the joint and maybe out and beyond it. And just a way to kind of release the joint system a little bit. Right. If you feel comfortable with it, maybe start to let the arms come up as well. So maybe starting to open up the shoulder. And you could do two things with that. You could maybe just hang out in that position. And again, just check in with the shoulder, whether it's still kind of free, whether the arms free. There's a really great exercise with the balls like this, which you would do like, it's called like a happy Buddha exercise. And you would basically, if you see the statue of a happy Buddha, one of them is, he's got the two balls in the hands and he's, the stories that he gained enlightenment through this exercise. So he's one of the Buddhas that gained enlightenment doing this, and you see he's totally happy. And if you try this exercise with the weight, you won't be happy for very long. You'll be in pain. So the idea is to go to a position where it's kind of effortless and it's this kind of shake out of the body. So it's kind of one of those silly exercises, which is actually really, really a good one. I do this exercise, especially if you've got these big, heavy guys coming to the dojo with lots of creatine and protein shake and those kind of things. It would tend to be very stiff and held and on with the body. So this is a great one. Just do that for 2 minutes. You'll probably feel it. So, and just again, what you're looking for is like whole body. If you start to feel the shoulders start to give you a lot of grief, just let them release back down, and then again release down. Try and bring the arms back up again. So you're just looking for again a kind of open position with the shoulder. You're kind of mid-range, so you're not kind of stretching out kind of fully, and you're not also kind of somewhere kind of too loose with it. So there needs to be a kind of right amount of tension, and it's just to kind of take the slack out. Now, it's a bit of a change of perspective, but imagine you're kind of upside down, hanging off a bar, and you're just releasing the arms to the ground. That's the kind of feeling you want, in a sense, that the shoulders kind of tractioned a little bit. The other image you could use is the opposite, would be like hanging off a bar, so that the shoulders are kind of free down, and then I can kind of release into the ground. So, so where bars are very useful in terms of being able to hang the weight and release out the shoulder. And then again, you just try and pass the movement too. And you could also think maybe just kind of individuating a little bit. You could think about maybe changing the pattern and maybe taking it more to a kind of a wave pattern, to a spiral pattern. And you could take this anywhere once you've got it, once you've got the feeling of it. Again, if you ever feel the shoulder gives you a bit of grief, you could just do one side if it's just one shoulder, or you could again just take your time, release the arms out a little bit down, and then go. But this is a good exercise just to again challenge the shoulder. If it's kind of comfortable, it should be possible to do for quite a while. If the movement's easy, it won't have much of a stress feedback on the body. Very good. Good. Okay. And then just play a little bit with that. So that position now is going to be kind of embedded back in the movement. So allow yourself to kind of go up with a swing through. Start to think maybe about now, basically like slapping kind of motions, whipping motions. But again, keep the whole joint system free as you do it. So it could be the back of the palm side of the hand. It could also be the kind of back side of the hand, like a back slap. So just play with different parts of the hand. Or you could go to the fingers. If you want a little bit of feedback, you could use you could use your free hand just to kind of slap into it. Down, slap on the back of the wrist. That one. Or just kind of do it freely. So if you've got a bag that you can hit or something, you could also do it with that. But I want to go like, in a way, it's kind of a lazy motion. So I want to be as kind of lazy with the movement in terms of energetic spend. 𝗙𝗎𝗄𝗎 describes the exercise like a kind of ragdoll. So when he does these kind of exercises, does them for a long time, 20, 30 minutes, maybe a bit longer. Good. Great. That's that. Okay, and then as you're doing it, if you think about again a little bit more of a functional movement, really use something in the space to kind of check. Now, what you're looking for is really like the inflection point of what will be the strike through, and look to basically at that point align everything towards it. So it's the same with anything that you would do if you think about a racket sport, or you think about archery, or you think about weapon work. Then there's going to be a moment in time where I need to kind of focus everything through. So this is going from like a kind of global attention of the body, obviously, to a very clear focus of the body, and it's external to the body, obviously. So it's just going to another stage of the connection, which is obviously connecting with yourself, obviously connecting with the ground, but connecting out then that feeling. So you could also use the people on Zoom if you wanted to as a focal point, maybe. Or you could use anything in the room. You're going to make it like a big, kind of thick, heavy slap, or hit, or push, or whatever it is coming out. And you want it, this is the danger of this area, that maybe the ones that feel like hardly anything's happening, maybe are the kind of right ones in a sense. The ones where I feel like a lot, it's probably a lot of kind of tension going on in the body. And maybe I'm just feeling that tension and resistance to the movement. So the ones which feel maybe like a kind of hardly anything's happened through the body. Maybe those are a bit more of the actually functional ones. If you think about throwing a ball or anything like that, very simple actions. Nice. Oh yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so notice one thing, which is the tendency for the now I don't want to lock the vision to the hand, so I don't want to do something now like this, and then so that's fine. Something like that sometimes does something like that does happen. But in this case, play with like if I catch an object and then I'm going to kind of move with it and then allow the movement of the body. Like obviously the head's going to move, so the eyes are flexible enough to be able to move. You can think obviously in this kind of direction. And obviously there might be a point when I go into it where I do lose it, and that's not a problem. But then I'm being still in the kind of peripheral vision, so that there maybe is a point in time where I do roll out if I'm kind of exaggerating the movement a lot. But it just notice the head. It's try and maintain an object in view as you do it. Easy to kind of stick to one object and be kind of specific with it. I've got this Mandalorian figure with his little visor. It's got a very clear shape that I can kind of track to. And then just play with movement to it. And you can also play with combinations. You could play with going forward, backwards, just kind of freely play with it. You could think about yokomichi, ski work, and maybe progress a little bit to that. Yeah, really nice. Great. Let's go very simple, which is it's a ski work, but be quite loose with it. The tendency with ski work is to kind of go into this kind of work and basically be held with it. So use all that work and play freely with the feet a little bit, and just play with more like a kind of push out. So it's like an open palm this way. Now you could do in a kind of very basic way where it'd be like 50-50 with the feet and just reach towards the object. Maybe use this position as well, just kind of check in with the body. So if you ever done any karate, like Catherine did a lot of karate, then you'll know there's these kind of positions, like they all look like holding positions, but they're kind of checks on the body, like we were doing key homework. So just maybe pause a little bit, just check in with the shoulder a little bit. You go to Shotokan style or the Okinawan styles. Teacher comes around, checks, hits, slaps, these kind of stuff, and they just checks on postures and comfort, maybe. So we just play with this as a kind of reach out. Easy, very simple one. And for now, just think about, again, the kind of wrist is still held loosely, and that might mean the finger starts kind of shoot out as well. So you might get a bit of a movement out here. And if the wrist is free, again, it's going to kind of allow that, or it will kind of happen naturally. And I'm definitely not trying to shake the wrist. This will be the same thing of like trying to wobble the body. Just let it go, basically. So that kind of maybe light vibration kind of movement is just a kind of natural one. So great. And then just take your focus down the wrist, down the arm, go to the elbow, and just play maybe more. It's more of a classic kind of ski work. And the key one with this is it's not kind of up in this area, but think about it coming from below. So it's going to be kind of scraping the side of the body maybe through the hip, and think about an arc which is going to kind of reach up this way. So it's the kind of classic ski. If you think about the Joe ski, it's an arc which is a kind of rising arc, and that's your basic one. Once you obviously you've got that, there's lots of variations on the ski, and just one way to do it. But just think in this case about the elbow, a bit kind of scraping the body. And again, if the elbow's held quite loosely, you'll get a kind of natural tensioning down the back side of the elbow, down the arm, and then out. And if I'm kind of pulling, you'll get the bicep contracting and then releasing. And it's not so much a kind of contractive movement and a release, although it could be done that way. Think about it as just a kind of natural tension down the arm. So I'm still keeping a sense of extension. One way to do that, you could think about the fingers and the forearm, just against maybe slightly pulling into tension through the motion, rather than again the kind of bicep engaged front of the arm, shoulder. So once you feel that, you can take it alternating, obviously. Have a kind of clear object with it, because then you've got a very clear feedback for the movement. So the tendency in this will be to kind of all over the place, which is fine, but easier in a sense is to start with a very clear object in mind and really kind of go towards it. There we go. So a very simple one, but really nice one. And then just you're doing it, just notice what's going on in the lower body, obviously. So the connection to the ground, the hips, what are the hips doing? Again, maybe the knees are releasing most of the time. Great. So a very simple one. Great. And then just look, if you think about like a coordinated one, I'm going to use the back, the front hand in this case, just basically on the center line, like I kind of reach out, like I'm trying to touch the object, and then just think about going into the strike with it. So you could do this, what I would do is just do this one side, and again, you could do this with any kind of foot position, but reach out, connect the center line to it, connect the focus, and then you're going to use this motion, and so there's a kind of equal motion. Obviously, there's a kind of function to this movement, and if you go to a lot of the application work, of this will be maybe things like pulling, or things like warding off, or blocking, or things like this. But in this sense, it would just really use as a kind of balancing tool for the body. So a kind of even front and back motion. And for the feeling also to go front and back. So I don't want to obviously get lost in the front and be kind of pulled forward. You want to get the sensation that the movement's going to be evenly distributed through the body. And in this case, that hand just helps with a kind of feedback to it. Once you're comfortable with it, you could take it into alternating, but just give yourself time in this one to kind of reset each time. And if you do it alternating, include that kind of reach out, because that reach out is also part of the exercise. It'll be like I'm kind of reaching out here, and then sending the fist out to it, or the hand out in this case without the fist. So there's kind of lots of stages that go on. We tend to, when we attack, because a lot of the time we're kind of rushing in training just to get 4 things done and then change partners and all that kind of stuff. We tend to kind of skip all this stuff. And actually, this is the important stuff, obviously, in terms of connection work. So there's always going to be a kind of setup to an attack. The more I'm kind of very conscious of those, the more maybe it's easier to avoid attacks to try developing. Maybe we can cut them out before they even develop. So, but notice there's always going to be a kind of setup for the attack. In this case, just making it very obvious what it is. Later, obviously, all that kind of disappears. Everything just becomes maybe a bit more condensed, but it would still happen in that sense anyway. It would just be less on a obvious level. Great. Good. Great. All right. Great. And then let's just play with a little bit of stepping work. So obviously, that with the feet in place, you're just looking at this kind of work. Then just play maybe a few basic ones will be like step through with it. Now, don't worry about kind of stepping through and kind of reaching this way, but just think about the kind of action that's involved with the step. So there's lots of ways to strike, obviously, but in terms of this, it will be like just at the moment of the strike, maybe passing the weight through on like a little bit more than the other. You could obviously do this with like a straight strike through into the left. So just play a little bit with the feet now and basically moving in space. So different ways you could work this. Obviously, you could think again about very basically just stepping towards the object. And then it's just an issue of timing when the weight's kind of applied through. The other one is just think about doing the step and just kind of pass the body through. Pass the body through. You've obviously got 2 sides of the body. You've got front and back hand. You could do either in terms of ski work. In terms of training and in terms of connection work, the one that's going to give me a little bit more opportunity is probably the step in. Tends to be the attack that we will go to as well in training, because in terms of blending against an attack, gives me much more time to kind of deal with. So it's the one you'll tend to see in Aikido classes. And later, obviously, anybody that knows how to strike, how to punch, probably won't be doing that one. It'll probably be something much more direct, much more difficult to deal with. And then the response to it is also much more direct, much more difficult to deal with for the attacker. Which comes as a surprise, or not. And then as you're doing it again, just trying as much as you can to bring both hands into it. So the tendency is then to maybe just go to one side, but really again, if you think about a clear setup, would be like a kind of reach out and then send the motion to the object in this case. And then the kind of clearer the object I've got, the easier it will be the easier it will be on the body to focus the movement in a sense. And same thing with bokken work. Think about, I'm going to look at bokken work later. Think about the moment when the weight is passed through the body. So you could do different timings, obviously, and there are different timings. But just consider things like you could do kind of 3 basic ones. One would be like stepping in the body and then applying the strike. One would be within the step, and one will be like delivering the weight and then driving the body through it. It depends really on the function of the strike, but play with it. There's no kind of correct one in that sense, but there's only kind of an appropriate movement. And that will also change maybe if I'm kind of going backwards with the body as well. So you could also do the same strike going off back. You could go to the side with it. So just start to explore now if you want different kind of angles. The other one you could play with is the object to the side and basically rotating into the strike and then going into the movement this way. So just start to challenge the body a little bit more. Now the path of the hand and the strike will change, obviously depending on the movement. So you might start to then, explore back fist, start to naturally come up, maybe hook punch starts to come up a little bit more. Jab, kind of cross, kind of combos maybe. Yeah, good. Oh, very nice. Very good. Very nice. Good. Great. Okay. Last one, just explore it, and it's basically a distancing thing. So it's that when I'm so close, obviously a lot of the striking moves that make sense. I can actually just go to the elbows to do kind of stuff. So elbows obviously short range strike, but they're really great for, again, trying to train the core of the body. And again, they're going to be in a line which is very much like a whip kind of motion. So just play with maybe including them. And if you're doing kind of combination work, you've got like a kind of reach out maybe, and then a kind of closing in distance. So just maybe play with, you've also got lots of different elbow strikes, depends on the orientation of the body. Front elbow strike coming across, maybe to the side, maybe to the back, maybe a rising strike, maybe a sinking strike. So there's lots of possibilities with the elbow. But again, if you think about core of the body, particularly now kind of taking the focus to the lat area, and it's the sensation of kind of squeezing the elbow out from the core of the body. Same way you would do with a strike, just makes it a little bit more clear, probably in terms of connection work. Great, Bernie. Thank you very much. Thank you. Good. Yeah, just bringing the awareness to a different section of the body, basically. So if you think about the fist can make the strike, the elbow can make the strike. You could do a shoulder blow. Sometimes we do if it's very close. Good. There's a really great analogy from a karate teacher, Rick Cotton. He talks about like you've got a handful of peanut butter and you're going to squeeze it out. So it's this kind of, it's like full, and then I'm going to go like squeeze it out. There's a really great one to, he really teaches with sensation. So he's a great one, a great person to look at in terms of sensation and being able to transmit sensation, feeling. And he's got a lot of analogies in terms of this, this kind of language stuff, very interesting stuff. This is a really nice one to think about, kind of a squeeze out, and the squeeze out is also kind of an emptying as well. So there's a kind of, and then everything's left. There's nothing left at the end, kind of thing. I'm trying to squeeze all the peanut butter out of the hand, and it's all gone. It's like a kind of sense of a release aspect. So maybe it goes to kind of getting more like a whipping quality, maybe more releasing kind of feeling than tends to happen with striking work. Yeah, good. And again, just play with different strikes, elbow, back fist. Could take it to also yokomen work, would be working on the same area. Could go back, if you start to feel you're kind of losing it, maybe go back to a kind of slapping motion again. So actually probably one of the best self-defense techniques to learn, a very good slap. Very effective, especially aimed towards the face. Very strong movement. Yeah, good. Okay, last one we'll do. It's a little bit tends to happen with striking work is that we tend to go in like a combative way, and then I'm kind of everything's happening just kind of here. In terms of using atemi, in terms of Aikido work, they're always going to be kind of embedded within movement. They tend to be embedded within the rotational movements. Not always, and obviously some of the direct stuff is just going to be one kind of atemi work. But just kind of open up the movements a little bit. Think about maybe adding in rotation work, and maybe just changing the movement with it. So most of the, if you think about lots of the atemi and the techniques, and a very obvious one would be like 𝗓𝗓𝗡𝗓𝗓 kodeshi. Will be like this kind of way, or 𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓. So it will be like these kind of embedded strikes within the movement. Obviously, all kind of 𝗓𝗔𝗞𝗘𝗠𝗨𝗦 work is kind of embedded within movement. So in this sense, just slightly maybe changing the intention from going to like I'm attacking to actually I'm blending, neutralizing. And then again, the kind of attacking or the atemi portion of it is to disrupt, take balance, or maybe. Okay. Good. So I would just play with open up the roots a little bit. Probably means going into a little bit more rotation work. And the key thing I was trying to get like embed the pattern within the rotation. And so it wouldn't be like I'm rotating and then striking, but that the actual rotation itself is the strike. And then you maybe go to this idea of like whole body atemi, which a lot of the advanced kokinae work kind of rely on this sense of the whole body being used as a kind of blow through. Nice, very good. Yeah. Always the danger with this training, and also it's like why sets are really great and kata is really great because they give you a fixed kind of form to kind of work with. So, but just play, if I go like a very simple exercise, I'm just going to kind of choose one, which will be like a rotation into a stand. Now, what I'm going to do is kind of stage it. So I'm going to kind of first find an object. In this case, I've got a really bright orange thing attached to the fridge. I think it's a Pokemon card. This, and then I'm going to kind of set it up. This, okay, and then I feel it there, and then maybe the hand starts to come up into it. Hand rotation, and then the strike. So trying to choose one thing, and just work the movement into it. So you could obviously, the progress stage for that could be many layers. Key ones would be like, am I in balance as I make the movement of the body? Footwork goes to footwork. Is the footwork kind of secure from the listen to the knees? And then the next stage would maybe like kind of catch my attention and lock the body to it. And then again, arm movement for the arms basically integrated into the movement. And then obviously kind of everything coming out at the end of it. Stage it, set up. And then it's the power of kind of kata formal training that you can actually go deep into some issues. But we also have a problem with that in that we just do choreography. And it's also very shallow, so there's no magic method actually. So just play within this form. If you got it kind of one side, or do you like switch to the other side, kind of do it evenly on both sides? Or switch the attack, for example. You could change, play with it. Great. Good. That's nice. Good. Yeah, that's nice. All right, last few minutes. Just grab a bokken. And it's a very similar exercise, really. So we'll just take this straight away into movement. So just think about a very simple cut. One would be like 𝗔𝗞𝗞𝗘𝗠𝗨𝗦. And let's go to the form which is like a whole body, really full whole body movement in motion. So be like going back to maybe the original kind of target that you had for object. Just play with the first few seconds, just really kind of hold the kamae to it. So that might mean kind of pausing and just coming into focus with the body. If you feel it's kind of come through within the body, just again, maybe just stalking a little bit with it. So just playing within the feet. So we'll stick to the right side in this case. Feel free to switch left and right if you like. Just for this kind of simple attack work, we'll do from the right side. In this case, you can think about things like presenting the body. So I'm going to kind of present to the right side, obviously. And just think about this. There's two uses of the kamae. Obviously, one is to prepare me for the attack. The other one is also to protect the rest of the body. So there's a kind of guard aspect to this as well. So kamae could be translated as a ready position, or also like as a guard position. So in this case, it's got two functions. It's got lots of functions, but the two main ones are to allow for an easy attack and to also protect the body. Now, in terms of protecting the body, it's going to be protecting this area and maybe the side of the head in this kind of area. So it will give me very easy access to protect the body in that side as well. And it also protects the front side of the body, in that if somebody goes to the front side, it's very easy for me to resist an attack in that position. So feel that you're kind of protected behind the weapon, but in the same sense, reaching out, extending out. And then just go to the exercise we did yesterday, which would be like a wobble, or like just trying to create a feeling down the weapon. And it would be like, it's the sensation that I would go to before the attack would be like, and then the release. So again, there's always going to be a kind of preparation. There's a kind of tensioning of the body, and then the release of it. You'll always get that, because if you think about sprinters on the block for 400 meters, they go into like high tension, and then there's a release. And if you don't do that stage, they're totally out. So some runners are just very good at looking very relaxed in that position, but there's always going to be a kind of tensile aspect of the body just before an attack. Great. And then from that, just going to very simple one will be like just a step through. kind of going into the cut. Now you could again stage the movement where the progression would be like just the footwork going into it forwards, and this kind of key aspect will be the core of the body going in, and then bring in the strike, bring in the raise of it, and then when you feel very comfortable with it, that's going to be laying the weight through it. Yeah, so just play with a very simple kind of 𝗔𝗞𝗞𝗘𝗠𝗨𝗦 strike. And the key aspect again is the aspect of the whole body movement. We tend to obviously go to the cut at the end, is all the focus goes there, and forget all the rest of it in a sense. So play within it. If you feel you've got a very clear form with it, very comfortable with it, just play with it tight, but keep it light. Notice it's very easy to start to go into distraction with it. So the more I can kind of focus on one object and hold the focus, again, the easier it's going to be in terms of training. Things like, in Japanese you call it isshin, like one pointed focus kind of feeling, or kind of one mind would be like one translation of that. Great. That's that. Great. And then just to get another simple one, if you think about the object you had, maybe another one was maybe behind. In this case, the thing on the fridge that I've got. What I'm going to do is just play with a rotation into a left side cut with this. Yeah, maybe you want to kind of stage it, right? Just kind of find the object and rotate to it. And then maybe it's just about bringing the raise into the rotation. And then maybe the whole body goes to the movement. Play a little bit with the footwork with this. You could do a very simple kind of Zengo rotation, which would be just on the spot, reaching out with the cut. You could also play with maybe like a backwards movement with it, once you come to with it. And you can also do a kind of forwards press with it. But just feel you kind of connecting out. And choose an object which is easy to kind of hold your attention. If it's too kind of bland, the body will get kind of kind of bored with it. So something that's kind of very stand out. Very easy for the body to tune into. And then just play a little bit with mixing them in. So right, front and back, right and left would be maybe something like this, rotating the back. And so the clearer the objects are, the easier it is. Once you've got that, you can take that to any kind of two objects, but just play with here. Yeah, there's some really great 𝗓𝗡𝗡𝗓 forms, which are like two-partner 𝗓𝗡𝗡𝗓 forms. My favorite forms to do in terms of the weapon work. And they're very simple, but they involve basically two people attacking. Legs get expanded to 3, 4, and you can change the geometry of the people attacking. And these are exercises that came from that's the sword that originates in 𝗓𝗡𝗟𝗓𝗓, or lots of sword that originates in the original sword school, Japan. Great, let's make it a little bit like a cool down, but start to kind of feel that you bring it into one motion there. So do this lightly. And again, you could do this with any kind of two objects, but start to think about one or two cuts and just start to kind of bring it into one movement. So the thing would be then to just take the distinctions out between the two cuts and just make it flow as one piece. So great phrase from 𝗢𝗍𝗓𝗏 is power lies in making distinctions and freedom lies in dissolving them. So freedom in the sense that way you would go into maybe spontaneous movements would be in getting rid of all the distinctions again. Just using the body intelligently. Naturally, I'll use that word. Great. And then just again, just the last 30 seconds. So just come back to kind of more of a kamae position, and just play with kind of a sway back. So just working my way back to in the center of the room. And just checking with the shoulders, with the knees. And just use a kind of slight wave through. If you want to, you could totally drop the sword out, drop the shoulders. And let the breath kind of calm down a little bit. Just let the weight settle again into the feet. Maybe it's just passing the sword around a little bit, shaking out. Just listen to the body a little bit. Go back to that kind of just pulsing the weight down, just let it settle. Right. Good. All right. We will bow out right there. Great. Domo arigato gozaimasu.
どうもありがとうございました。
All right. Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you very much.